This is a topic, Ramakrishna and homosexuality, that is controversial within the circle of Ramakrishna's devotees, the Ramakrishna order specifically, and with the Vedanta societies. But I don't think it's very controversial among gay devotees or any gay person who's read the life of Ramakrishna, because anyone who has very likely sees within Ramakrishna's biography elements with which they can identify. You know, cross-dressing is one of the most commonly mentioned, but it goes beyond just his dressing up convincingly as a woman when he was a child. That isn't necessarily an indication of any kind of sexuality, maybe transsexuality. And you could make an argument for that. But in Ramakrishna's case, it's not that simple or easy to pin him down. Part of the problem is that the monastic devotees of Ramakrishna, in India specifically, are very uncomfortable with the whole idea of sexuality of any kind, homosexuality or heterosexuality. They don't even like that the word sexuality is mentioned in the same sentence with Ramakrishna. You have to get that sort of sex phobia idea in there. You have to understand that to really understand their visceral aversion for the whole concept. Now, this all came into the public rather dramatically in the 1995, 96, when Jeffrey Kripal's book, Kali's Child, The Mystical and Erotic in the Life and Teachings of Ramakrishna was published. There's a couple reasons for that. One is, he wasn't the first person to state that, first scholar to write that he thought Ramakrishna was homosexual. It wasn't a new idea. But the way that he did his research, that is, in going to India and working closely with some swamis of the Ramakrishna order, and then coming out with this book that to these swamis was so shocking, so utterly different from their own understanding or the way they wanted to understand Ramakrishna. And in a tone, the tone of the book, this gotcha tone, like he'd exposed some dirty secret of the order that they'd been keeping all these years. All that combined, with the emotional impact of that, with their own, admitted discomfort with the whole concept of sexuality, created a furor. It became a kind of a crisis when the Encyclopedia Britannica wanted to list, or did list, Kripal's book as one of the chief resources to learn about Ramakrishna. Their order was just like aghast. How could this book, which they were convinced contained so little accurate information, could it be a world resource for Ramakrishna? So they made a big stink about it, and we went all the way up to the Indian Parliament, where they were debating whether or not to ban the book. It was and the scholar Kripal, his life as an Indologist was over. He could no longer go to India, and he switched from Indology to just being a religious studies professor, which he is now. And so what is the trauma? And it didn't end there. Then this nun of the order in Santa Barbara, Vrajaprana, and teamed up with a non-Bengali speaking monk, Tyagananda. Well, when I say non-Bengali speaking, non-native speaker of Bengali, Tyagananda, to write this sort of anti-Kripal book, which only amplified the message, his message, I think. And later, this Bengali scholar Chattopadhyay refuted a lot of their points on the basis that Tyagananda just didn't understand Bengali as well as Kripal did. So let me get down to the topic. Was Ramakrishna homosexual? Who knows? We don't. I don't think there's any convincing evidence that he had sex with anybody ever. Rather, it's more convincing that he did not. But here's where things get subtle. You see, one can have homoerotic feelings and behaviors. That is, eros as opposed to sexuality. Eros is about attraction. The god Eros, the Greek god Eros, who is synonymous with the Hindu god Kama, the god of love, who has these flower arrows that he shoots mythologically to create passion in people. Eros shoots his arrows at the heart, not at the genitals. That's an important point. So if we look at Ramakrishna's heart, what we find is an unwavering devotion to the divine in every conceivable form, male, female, and anything else beyond that. So do we find indications within his statements of devotion that he was especially attracted in some ways to male deities in ways that we would have to characterize as passionate? Well, yes, of course. Examples of that, of wanting to embrace Krishna as a wife embraces her husband. In another place, in Ramchandra's biography of Ramakrishna, Ramakrishna says you can certainly realize God, and not only that, you can sport with Him. Now, the word sport, bihar kora, can mean a number of things, from just sort of play around to have sex with. Did Ramakrishna say you could have sex with God? I don't know, maybe. And if he did, what would that mean? Certainly not anything physical. There's a communion that happens in mystical experience with God that is, a union that is quite profound, that transcends the ordinary ideas of physical union. So I'm guessing that's probably what he meant. But he used this intentionally, I think, erotic language to show the intensity of passion that he had and that one should cultivate for the divine. So we get back to the question, was Ramakrishna homosexual? I don't know. Did he have qualities that gay people can identify with? Absolutely, which is why I call him gay familiar. In my book, Gay Tantra, I talk about Ramakrishna being familiar to gay people. He's gay familiar. There's things in his life, this sort of blending of masculine and feminine attitudes that many gay people can identify with. We often feel like we're a blend of masculine and feminine in a way that perhaps more gender gender bifurcated people might feel less identification with. I don't know. I'm sure that there are some so-called straight people or non-gay people who recognize they have both masculine and feminine aspects to their personality. That's something new in Western psychology. Jung certainly emphasized the need for the integration of masculine and feminine in a single personality. So I don't know why we should get so upset by Ramakrishna saying, for instance, when he was asked if he was male or female, that he didn't know, and he laughed. Girish Ghosh asked him that question. I don't know. So those are things that a gay person, a modern gay person, can often identify with. Now, why is that important? Who cares, right? Well, a gay person ought to care very much, because traditional religions have taken so many pains to exclude us from spirituality and religion, to the point where many gay people simply reject it all as nonsense and as irrelevant to them. But in Ramakrishna, we get somebody with whom many gay people can identify very easily, and in ways that are particularly helpful in formation of a spiritual identity. That being fully gay, fully attracted to masculine energy, masculine images, that a person can still be deeply and sincerely spiritual. This concept, it's there in the Hindu tradition. It goes way, way back. But Ramakrishna embodied it in a way that we hadn't seen so much in recent centuries. You could say it was there in Sri Chaitanya, with whom Ramakrishna was often compared. But anyway, Ramakrishna himself said he had sexual feelings. He said any embodied soul, any embodied being has them. And he specifically included Brahmagyanis, that is, knowledge of Brahman, and even himself. This is from the Great Master biography of Ramakrishna. So, if he had sexual feelings, and we know he was passionately attracted to male deities, it's not a huge leap to say that his sexual feelings were homosexual feelings. But in terms of sexual expression, they were all in visions. They were all in this mystical union with the divine, rather than in external forms. Now, one of the reasons that there was some scandal that occurred in Ramakrishna's time around him was that he had these young men who were attracted to him, who became the first monks of the order. And we know that he had very intimate relations with them, and I don't mean sexual relations at all, but I mean he was passionately attracted and attached to them, especially to Narendra and to Rakal. Narendra, who founded the Ramakrishna order, and Rakal, who became its first president. There's, scenes we've heard of Rakal suckling at Ramakrishna's breast. Now, they were in a mode of mother and child in this case, which is something that I don't think most of us relate to necessarily now in the modern world, and that to see these adult men in this relationship, which they were at that time, it was going to bring up questions. But if you really examine what was going on from their perspective, it wasn't about sexuality per se. It was about this deep loving attraction and the ability to assume an attitude of a relationship that reflected some kind of mythological relationship between God and the devotee. So was Ramakrishna homosexual? I don't know. You could argue that he was pansexual or multisexual or whatever. I don't think you can argue convincingly that he was asexual. You could say he didn't have sex, certainly, and I believe that. But to say he didn't have sexual feelings at all is simply not true. And his own words have contradicted that. And thank God for it, because if we take him as an incarnation of God, which is the position of the Ramakrishna order, we should want him to be everything to everybody, all things to all people, the embodiment of all kinds of ways of being, sexual and non-sexual. And for us to experience that oneness with the divine, we need to be able, as gay people, to identify with a divine being who is like us in our homosexual orientation. So that is why I've written and said God has to be gay for us, because otherwise we remain ontologically alienated from the divine being. And you can't be alienated from the divine being and still experience oneness with it. So my position on all this is, to the order, get over yourselves. The evidence is there in your literature that Ramakrishna had these erotic feelings for the divine. Figure that out and stop fighting that battle, because it goes nowhere. Those writings aren't going away, and they shouldn't. They need to be there. And in this modern time, it's just not right for you to be casting homosexuality as somehow unsuitable for a spiritual person or for a divine person. A divine person should be whatever people are, whatever sexuality, whatever sexual orientation or affectional orientation they may be. All must be included. As Ramakrishna said, you can't get the total weight of the fruit just by weighing the flesh. You have to weigh the seeds and the skin as well to get the total. So you can't, in Ramakrishna's spirituality, you can't exclude anyone or anything and still get the whole of the divine being.